Hello, my name is Amber Kilman, and this is my critical assignment for my Prevention of Athletic Injury class at Cal Baptist University. I'm going to be talking about injury identification, assessments, and prevention in the sport of swimming. So a little bit of background before we get started. The sport of swimming has been around since the dawn of time. The first stroke that was ever recorded was breaststroke. And then freestyle, backstroke, and butterfly came into play later on in the course of history. The first competition that was ever recorded was in the Olympics in 1896. That is when they first started competing with breaststroke and freestyle. After that, they added backstroke in the Olympics 4 years after that, and then 4 years after that, that's when they added butterfly. I've been a swimmer for 14 years. I've done it most of my life. It's a very demanding sport when it comes to your muscles. Swimming is a competitive sport that uses most of the muscles in the body. So, as you can see here, every little dot that's in this swimmer's body in the picture, that is a muscle that is being used. So, all the red is the muscles being used just in that stroke, and that's freestyle. So it's a very demanding sport. By using most of the muscles in the body, it can cause injury. Factors that can cause injury in the sport: swimming, poor technique. If you have poor technique, you can cause a lot of problems for yourself, like raising your shoulder wrong, kicking wrong, any way like that can cause injury. Just making sure you have the proper technique in order to make yourself not be injured. If you use a stroke too much, some people they prefer certain strokes. So like me, I was a really good backstroker. My brother's a really good breaststroker. So if you overuse that stroke in a certain amount of time, you're going to injure yourself because you're using the same muscles, you're using the same momentum, maybe even going faster, and that can cause injury as well. Injuries can happen at any age. I teach children from 4 to 10. I've had to help them with cramps. I've had to help them stretch their shoulders. I had to help them stretch their ankles. It can happen at any age. So it's good to know that it's just not certain ages. It happens at any age. Injuries can happen to both genders, just depending on what you're doing for the stroke, and if you're overusing it, that comes into play too. But both genders can have the same amount of injuries. It just depends on the workout you're doing, what you're doing, stuff like that. Three common injuries within the sport of swimming: had them all: shoulder injury, knee injury, neck injury. The first one we're going to talk about is shoulder injuries. So usually when shoulder injuries occur, they're the most common. I've had a shoulder injury, I don't know how many times. There was a time when I was on RCC swim team that we all had it at the same time during tapering. So it's the most common injury that you can run into in the sport of swimming. Usually occurs when you have poor technique, or there's a long break in between practices. So let's say you practiced on Monday and then you got sick, so you don't come back till Friday. 3 or 4 days is a very long break for swimming. It's good to keep doing it continuously. A common shoulder injury would be a rotator cuff injury. According to Mackenzie Lobby in the article How to Fix 4 Common Swimming Injuries, she states that rotator cuff injuries are characterized by an inflammation and sharp pain in the shoulder that worsens as the arms extend over the mid-stroke. So extending, just like the picture shown to you on the left. Mechanisms of injury in the shoulder. So as you can see with the top picture, that's the rotator cuff tear. In the picture below the rotator cuff tear, that is a swimmer doing an improper stroke. So when you take your arm and you just swing it around, that's not a common movement that can be used when we're just like walking around or everyday living, so that's going to cause some problems when you just swing it. So the proper way to do a swimming stroke is to bring your arm up. You want high elbow. You want to make sure your elbow's bent, and then you just stretch it forward. You can't just swing around or else you're going to hurt your arm, which is going to cause a shoulder injury. And yeah, just like I said. Using your muscles over and over and over again can cause injury as well. It can cause inflammation in the tendons of the rotator cuff by using the weary muscles over and over and over again. It can cause discomfort. Usually in the sport of swimming, you're always using your very weary, tired muscles. So that's when a lot of injuries occur. So it's best to be able to be careful and be aware of how tired you are so you don't keep re-injuring yourself. An assessment that you can do for a shoulder, the athletic trainer can evaluate you by asking questions. Usually that's what they do first, is they want to get the when, how, and why it happened. They want to know where it happened too, so they'll ask you if there's any discomfort or anything like that. Some good tests that they can do are x-rays in order to spot the injury in your rotator cuff. They can also perform a Joby test for the supraspinatus tendon, which is part of your rotator cuff. The PAT test for the infraspinatus, because there's 4 different types of muscles in your rotator cuff. So these are the 4 different tests 3 different tests that you can perform for the 4 different types of rotator cuff muscles. Usually the best way to treat a shoulder injury in the sport of swimming is icing. Icing usually helps a lot. I know it helped me. You should ice your shoulder for 10 minutes twice a day. This is how you know when you have a torn shoulder injury, is if it's inflamed or there's torn tendons or if there's discomfort in your shoulder. Knee injuries, I've gotten knee injuries before, but mostly my brother, because he was a breaststroker, he usually got the knee injuries. This is usually only in breaststrokers. It usually happens if you're not doing the kick right or you're overusing the joint. Usually occurs from the inner side of the knee, which is the medial collateral ligament. The medial collateral ligament is the knee ligament found on the inner side of the knee joint. In breaststroke, according to Lobby, MCL injuries happen when you do the whip kick. As you internally rotate your hips with the bent knee and hips, you turn your feet out, which can be hard for the medial knee. So in the pictures to the right, you can see a torn knee, the torn anterior cruciate right here, and then below is a video demonstrating the breaststroke kick. So this is the whip kick that you would do during the breaststroke. That's the whip kick right there. That's usually what you do when you're doing breaststroke. So this is how many knee injuries are caused. The knee joint injury is called breaststroker's knee. Breaststroker's knee, you usually get knee injuries because of the constantly doing the whip kick, as I shown you in the previous video. You can see in the picture how you do the whip kick. Usually when I tell my swimmers, you bring your legs up, turn your toes out, and you bring them around and together. That's how you do a whip kick. The knee injury in swimming can also be caused by doing the wrong technique. If a lot of people do it wrong and they don't turn their feet out, they can cause a scissor kick. I've had a scissor kick before and it's not fun. It took me forever to get it fixed. Anatomy of the knee and assessments. These are what causes knee injuries in the sport of swimming: a swollen knee, medial knee injury, overly or internally rotating the hips can cause it. An assessment that they can do while the athletic trainer is going to ask you questions just to see when, why, and how it happened. They can do x-rays in order to identify if there's a fracture, and then an MRI is the best way to determine if there is an MCL knee injury. And also it's good to switch strokes if you keep having the knee injury, and then it's good to ice it, just like all swimmers do. We all ice our knees and other injuries. The last injury that can occur is a neck injury. This usually happens because when you're doing freestyle, you turn your head, breaststroke, butterfly, bring your head up. So just doing all those different movements can cause a neck injury. This can cause an upper spine injury because of all the movement in your neck. Mechanism of the neck. Overextending the neck can cause neck injuries. This usually occurs when in breaststroke and butterfly. Like I said, you have to bring your head up and then bring it back down. So then that causes a lot of different neck movements that we are not used to. Constantly whipping the neck can cause neck injuries. The neck plays an important part of breathing in the sport of swimming, so constantly breathing and doing these movements will cause your neck to hurt. The anatomy of neck injuries, there's your neck can strain, there's soft tissue injury, which is whiplash, and a stiff neck. The athletic trainer is going to ask you what, when, why, where does your neck hurt, and they're going to give you different stretches and exercises that you can do. Some good exercises that I found were neck extension on the hands and knees, or a head lift side bend. This helps with your neck range of motion. The best way to prevent the injury from getting worse is to take time out of the pool. So that, because with spine, your neck is connected to your spine, and that's the most important part of your body is the spine. So it's better to take time out of the pool in order to help you heal so you're not damaging it even more. This is a video that I did with a volunteer. This shows the 3 different exercises, the 3 different injuries that are in the sport of swimming. I came up with 2 different exercises for each injury. And that is the end of my critical assignment. I know there's a lot of information, but these were the 3 common injuries that were in the sport of swimming. Even though that there are a lot of injuries in this type of sport, the sport is still a great sport to do. It's the best exercise that you can get for yourself. I highly recommend that everybody try swimming. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.